Breaking news into the newsroom on the Mets Magic podcast. We are back. If you're watching on YouTube, this guy, Juan Soto, has signed with the New York Mets. It's a 15-year, $765 million deal. It's the largest contract in the history of sports. We'll talk about the money. Is it an overpay? The news that I got Friday, where I put it out there in the universe from what I heard. And it happened. We'll talk about all of it in an emergency episode of Juan Soto to the New York Mets Magic podcast coming up next.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Mets Magic with Jake Brown.
And it's in there, strike three called. The Mets win the pennant. The New York Mets have won the National League pennant. Put it in the books. The New York Mets, for the first time in 15 years, are champions of the National League.
The sickest New York Mets podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to an emergency episode of the Mets Magic podcast. I'm Jake Brown at Jake Brown Radio. Welcome back to the program. We are back, and for good effing reason. It is a historic day in Mets history. It is a historic day in baseball history. It is a historic day in the history of sports. Juan Soto has signed the largest deal in the history of sports, and we're here to talk about it. 15 years, $765 million. We'll talk about the escalators. We'll talk about what the Mets might do next. We got a lot to get into. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, please. Right here at the Sick Podcast Mets Magic. Follow us at Sick Pod Mets. Follow me at Jake Brown Radio. Follow me on TikTok. I do TikTok lives every day. Check me out on TikTok, YouTube, Jake Brown Radio. Smash that thumbs up if you're watching now. Comment right now. How are you feeling about Juan Soto? Do you like the deal? Do you hate the deal? Are you in reality that this is Steve Cohen toilet paper money? He's got the money. Let us know in the chat. We'll read your comments throughout the program, and we appreciate you for hopping on this happy Monday. It's not a happy victory Monday for New York Jets, the Giants, anyone else in New York, but it's a victory for the Mets. And there's a lot of sore loser Yankee fans out there who are, kind of saying a lot of things that, I just don't understand. They went from loving Juan Soto, doing everything to keep him, to saying he stinks and we didn't want you anyway. Like coping is happening. The Yankee fans are coping right now, and we'll talk about that as well. Armand's in the chat. He's excited. And, if you're a Met fan, let's start with this. This is an exciting day. This is a glorious day in the history of the franchise. Bringing in Juan Soto. Yes, let's get it out of the way. It's a massive overpay. He's not worth an average annual value of $51 million. After the fifth year, we'll flash the tweet, he can get up to $55 million. Soto can either opt out after the fifth year in 2029 or receive a $4 million raise per season. That can go from 51 to $55 million for the remainder of the contract, Jorge Castillo tweeted. And, that takes it over $800 million for Juan Soto. Of course, no player's worth that. Shohei Ohtani is probably the only player worth that kind of money. But here's what you got to understand. Steve Cohen's got deep pockets. It's not our money. And no player in a contract of double-digit years ages well. Aaron Judge might not age well on that 9-year deal. Francisco Lindor might not age well on his 10-year deal. No one in their late 30s gets really better as a hitter. Of course. But your goal is to win a championship now. And your goal is to win it fairly soon. I'm not saying the Mets are the favorites yet. There's a lot of moves still to make for this team that we'll talk about. But your goal in the next 3 to 5 years is to win a ring, maybe 2 if you're the Mets. But you got to focus on finally ending this ringless drought. And that's what means everything to Steve Cohen. It means everything to him. It means everything to Alex Cohen's father. Like, he wants a ring for his father-in-law. And he was at the meeting. You know, all the reports are about, you know, how much better the Mets' presentation was than the Yankees. The future. He saw the future in the Mets. The money was the first and foremost thing because, listen, the Yankees gave a very respectable offer of 16 years, $760 million. No deferred money. But the Mets topped it. They gave him 15 for 765, $3.5 million per year. They gave him the escalator that gets it to $55 million. They gave him a $75 million signing bonus, and there was no way he could refuse. And who knows? Maybe in 5 years he does opt out, and with Scott Boras tries to get even more money. But maybe he's a Met for the rest of his career. And the Mets with Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto build something special that a fan base that has been starving their whole lives for finally gets what they want. That's a championship. Anyone my age or younger has never seen a championship. I'm 33 years old. Anyone from age 38 and under has 0 championships from the Mets in their lifetime. This is an entire, generation of people from babies to 38-year-olds. They don't have a ring. They don't have a trip down the Canyon of Heroes. And this is an owner that wants to change that narrative. Does Juan Soto alone do that? No. But the impact he makes not only as a player, but on the hitter in front of him, the hitter behind him, and the rest of that lineup is massive. Juan Soto, in his second season and his first full season in the big leagues, won a championship in 2019 with the Nationals. Then COVID happened. Then the Nationals changed things, and things changed for them. But, he went to the Padres, wasn't the same player, went to the Yankees, and he carried them to the World Series. This is a guy that's been to a World Series with a Yankee team that really had no business getting there, that had a cakewalk in the American League to get there, but he got them there, and a guy who won a World Series. So, in 2 of his 5 full seasons, we throw out the rookie year, he didn't play a full year, and we throw out 2020 because that's the COVID 60-game season, doesn't count. In 2 of 5 years, he's won a championship and been to a championship. That's a good ratio for a guy who didn't play with a team with the money the Mets have. Now he has a owner that's filthy rich and willing to spend more than anyone. He's got a GM who is a baseball genius in David Stearns. He's got a manager that in his rookie season as a manager went to the NLCS and was 2 wins from the World Series. He's got a right-hand man in Francisco Lindor, who is the face of the Mets franchise, who is a friend of his. He's got a stadium where he hits as good as anywhere else in Citi Field that he loves to play in. And he's got every last dollar possible. From top to bottom, everything is aligned with the Mets structure to do something special now. And now it's the time to complete the rest of the roster, figure out first base, figure out the rotation, figure out the bullpen, figure out who you're trading, and get this thing done. And take this team to a promised land and take a generation down the Canyon of Heroes that they've been waiting for their whole lives. Take 4 decades of Mets fans to somewhere they've never been before. A parade, a New York Mets parade. And this was the first step in doing that. They gave him way too much money, of course, but you're worth what someone's going to pay you. And not only were the Mets going to pay him, he obviously meant something to the Yankees. And to those Yankee fans and people saying, no, Yankees are better off. Well, the Yankees wanted him back. They gave him a 16-year, $860 million offer. That is massive. They had the chance to match, and they said no. And here's why. They knew this bidding war probably wouldn't stop because Steve Cohen was going to do whatever it takes to make Juan Soto a Met. And what this means across the board for them, as much of an overpay as it is, you already have tickets opening days like sold out already. The Mets were smart and had today lined up to be the day tickets went on sale. Tickets are flying. Jerseys are flying. The hype in Mets land is real, and they're not even done yet. They still have a huge offseason ahead. So you can say all you want about the overpay and why would you do this, but what this means, the trickle-down effect on the franchise, is absolutely massive. And you're not going to hear a Met fan complain about how much money they spend because we just went through our entire lives with broke ownership, with poverty ownership. Now you have real ownership and a legit general manager. The Yankees were very close to offering the same amount, but they just fell short. Now, they gave him the extra year, but the more AAV meant more to Juan Soto and Scott Boras. And if you're a Met fan, you got to be proud of your owner. You got to be proud to be a Met fan today. And it's been a fan base that's been laughed at. We've all been laughed at. We've all been ridiculed our whole life. We've always been the little brother. The little brother, in quotes, just spent more than the big brother. So who's talking now? This is the Mets Magic Podcast. I'm Jake Brown, the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. So Friday night, I put out a tweet and I said, I'm not a reporter. I'm not reporting, but from what I'm hearing. When I meant what I'm hearing, I did get a text that ended up being accurate. So I had, I tweeted 15,750 is what I was told. It got to 765 because obviously over the weekend they were going back and forth, and he was able to get an extra $1 million per year, which could get over to $800 million in escalators. And if he doesn't opt out after year 5, it's $55 million a year. They can void the opt out by adding $4 million from 2030 to 2039. It's a lot of money. That's an extra 40. That takes it at $805 million, the largest total value contract in MLB history at the signing, and the largest contract in MLB history in terms of 15 years. The text I got was he's coming, announcing Sunday night / Monday morning, 15/750. It was Friday at 8:56 p.m. So I was a little off on the number, but I was confident, and I had so many tweets, so many TikTok comments about how you're dumb, you don't know anything, you don't know anyone, and I just want to say, shut your mouth. A beautiful text. Just beautiful. Juan Soto is reporting has a full no trade clause in his contract with the Mets. So he would have to waive that he's traded, but listen, I think first and foremost, this was about the money. But like I said, this was about what the Mets are building. And since day one of the offseason, I said this was coming. Not only because the Mets were going to outbid everyone, but listen, the Mets structure, everyone's like, he had fun with the Yankees. Yeah, he had fun on the field. He's playing the game of baseball. But I don't think he loved that franchise. And then there were reports about how some Yankee security, didn't let some of his crew or chefs or whoever it was in certain levels of access or in the stadium. I don't remember what the exact wording was, but the Yankees didn't treat him the same as the Mets did. The Mets rolled out the red carpet, and that's what you're in love with this ownership, is they're doing anything and everything it takes to win. And that's a great owner. Yankees will move on from this, but he got them to the World Series. Aaron Judge did too, but Aaron Judge fell asleep in October. This is a big loss for the Yankees. They will pivot. They will go for Anthony Santander or Teoscar Hernandez, one of those two, to play right field is my guess. But, Anthony Santander is a good player coming off the best year of his career, 40-homer guy, but it's a big drop-off from Juan Soto. Now let's address the negative and the elephant in the room. Juan Soto is a very average fielder. You're not getting a lot of stolen bases. You're not getting a lot of speed. You're not getting a guy who's going to make gold glove plays in right field. We all admit that. But what he means to the lineup is what's important to this Mets team. And having Lindor and Soto in the same lineup is what's important to the Mets team, and that pushed them over the edge. But he's not a gold glover. He might eventually be a DH. You also could have the option of moving to first base. And first base is what's going to be the next intriguing move for the New York Mets. Now, starting pitching, I think they're in on Burns. I think they're talking to Burns. Bregman could be a possibility, and moving Vientos to first. If you bring in Bregman, Pete Alonso's gone. Guys, I know a lot of fans love Pete Alonso. I know he's the polar bear. I know a lot of fans love him. I don't think he is great protection in the lineup for Juan Soto. He is a boom or bust hitter, and there's going to be a lot of times over the next 5 years that they sign Pete Alonso where you're going to be pissed off because he grounds into a double play or strikes out after Soto doubles or Soto walks or Soto's on base in some capacity. There's going to be a lot of times you're going to be pissed at him. And I know he had a great Mets career. He had awesome playoff moments, but he's coming off the worst year of his life. He's not a good defensive first baseman. He has no speed, and I think the Mets want to get younger. And what Juan Soto does is get you younger. And what Christian Walker doesn't get you younger, but he bridges the gap for now until you have one of your young guys play first base, or you have Mark Vientos full-time take over first base. That's why Walker is the top of my priority list, but you got options. Here's kind of your lay down of what the Mets can do here when we talk about hitting behind Juan Soto. Because you have Nimmo, here's the locks you have right now. You have Nimmo, Lindor, you have Alvarez at catcher, and then it's TBD across the board. Center field, you have Jose Siri, but will they be in the market for Cody Bellinger to maybe play a little bit more center field? I can't imagine Jose Siri's playing 150 games. I hope they mend that relationship. Jose Siri and Juan Soto, they'll be playing next to each other. But I got to imagine the Mets are thinking, hey, we need to have someone else also play center. Maybe it's Tyrone Taylor, but again, not a great hitter. Maybe they realize, hey, we'll put 2 Gold Glovers in center, platoon them, won't be the best hitters, but we'll have great defense up the middle. Maybe that's their thought. Center, second base is Jeff McNeil, but I think the Mets should move on from him. You have Luis Angel Acuna who could play second or third. You have Ronnie Mauricio at some point when he's ready and he's back, playing baseball activities, could play second or third. You have the option to move Vientos to first. You have Vladimir Guerrero will be a free agent next offseason as an option. You have the option to maybe trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think the Blue Jays are going to want a boatload for him. I don't know if it's worth it. Maybe it's just better trying to get him next offseason. And who wouldn't want to play with Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto? What you have, too, is Puerto Rican and Dominican representation at the top of their games. And that's huge. The Latino population in baseball is massive. And now you have a Puerto Rican star in Francisco Lindor and a Dominican star in Juan Soto. A lot of players now are going to want to come to the Mets. They saw what Steve Cohen gave Juan Soto, and they said, I could get paid here. I can win here. I could play with stars here. I could play for a Latino manager who showed he's ready for the show in Mendoza. Could play at a beautiful ballpark. Citi Field will be the place to be. The aura is in Queens now. And the Yankees will move on. The Yankees are still a great team. The Yankees can still win the American League. But the Mets are fighting to take down the Dodgers. The Dodgers right now, still the favorites. But the Mets are doing all they can to get over the top, to get past the Dodgers. And it's a joyful day if you're a Met fan because you realize Uncle Steve means business. David Stearns is cooking, and they're cooking with gas. Someone get a screen grab of me and Soto here. Look, he's biting my head. Look at that. This could be the mixtape cover. Take a bite of the Big Apple. Now you're on the right side of New York. Staten Island is very mad today. A lot of Yankee fans will say you're going to regret that. Yeah, maybe they do. But if the owner has the money and can afford it, it's hard to regret it if the Mets do win. And I think what gets overlooked in all this, like I said, is Juan Soto in 2 of the 5 full seasons he played. By the way, in his 5 full seasons, he hasn't played less than 150 games, so he plays. He doesn't miss much time. He's been durable in his career. That's important. Now, he's hopped around to different teams. I get that, but he's locked in here now, and he wants to be part of what the Mets are building. I think all along the Yankees were the ones in that were driving the price up, and he always wanted to be a Met because they knew the Mets were going to outbid him. So the Yankees were used as leverage here, and a lot of Yankee fans are big mad today. But they got used in all this. The Mets had the money. It's an overpay, but not to Steve Cohen. So the Yankees were used to get this number higher and higher and higher. But in the end, he was always going to be a New York Met. And that's why I was shocked that Yankee fans have any semblance of confidence that he was coming back. He loved it here. Did he, though? Did he love playing in the Bronx? No. Aaron Judge, I'll let him be. He wants to play with Francisco Lindor, not Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge, better player, but we don't know what, if they were hanging out Friday nights, going out together. I don't think so. I think they had a great relationship on the field. They were 2 stars out there, but we don't know anything else. There's been no reports of riff, but there's also, it's not Juan Soto and Aaron Judge were seen out together on a Friday night. He went to the Yankees for the year. He knew he'd cash out in that ballpark, in that little league porch in right field. He knew he would go there and have an incredible year, and that's exactly what he did. And now he gets to play in Citi Field for the next decade plus. Yep, Juan Soto, full no-trade clause. Armand, I said that earlier. Mets interested in reliever Jonathan Loizaga. Yeah, so, again, what they need next is figure out first. I don't pay Pete, but, I think they'll give Pete a fair offer, but I could see him going to Houston. You decide, do you want Walker? Do you move Vientos over? Bregman, I would be fine with, but I think Bregman's going to command $30 million a year. I don't love that. A guy coming off one of his worst seasons. I don't love Alex Bregman. And again, you have to say, hey, is Mark Vientos going to be able to play first? Bregman, 26 and 75, one of his lower RBI years. Years back, he was a 31, 41 homer guy, 2018, 2019, but he's fallen off a little bit. I just don't think Bregman will be worth it. I like Bellinger because of his versatility and ability to play first and center field. Bellinger's also only a 1-year deal, so that gives you the opportunity to try and get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next offseason. I think that's the Mets' ultimate goal here, is to have Vladdy. And I don't think Stearns wants to be locked into Alonso. And I think Mets fans will move on and live if they don't bring Pete Alonso here. So that's what I do. Now, starting pitching, Corbin Burns, Sean Manaea. That's where you start. That is where you start if you're the Mets and the starting pitching staff and addressing. They brought Clay Holmes in. I don't mind the Clay Holmes deal. I do think Clay Holmes ends up being a setup man. I don't trust him to be a starter. I think Clay Holmes makes more sense as a setup man. I think he's a good reliever when he's not a closer. Yankee fans know that well. So the Mets have to figure out the rotation. They got to get an ace. Senga, Montas, Peterson, Holmes, Blackburn is essentially their 5 now. But I think you probably bump either Holmes or Blackburn out of there if you get one of these guys. I would love Manaea back. If they can find a way for me to get Manaea and a Buehler, if they can get Manaea and Burns, great. It's a lot of money. But I think the Mets want to get creative when it comes to the lineup and not committing long-term to a first baseman because they realize they do need help in that rotation. Montas is a 2-year guy. Blackburn's, your 5th or 6th starter for a year. Holmes probably ends up a reliever. That leaves Senga and Peterson. for the long term. So the Mets realize they need arms. But we're in an era of baseball, you don't need three aces. You see teams win with one or two, one ace, a couple of solid pitchers, and a dominant bullpen. So you go out there, get an ace, you get a second-tier starting pitcher that's cheaper, you figure out the bullpen, whether it's Tanner Scott, Carlos Estevez, Jeff Hobbman, you got to get bullpen help. Right now, you have Edwin Diaz, you have Jose Budo, you maybe have Reed Garrett, Daniel Nunez, Sean Reed Foley. It's a very underwhelming Mets bullpen. They need help. They need to get a setup man. If it's not Clay Holmes, again, I think it should be Clay. This bullpen becomes much better if they make Clay Holmes a reliever and not a starter. But they need a really good setup man besides Clay Holmes if he, goes to the bullpen. If he's not in the bullpen, you need two really good relievers. So that's what's big for the Mets, getting pitching, getting a first baseman, and then figuring out who's going where, and then figuring out Starling Marte. Now, Starling Marte got booted. Do they trade for Crochet? I don't see Max Fried. You rarely see a Brave go to the Mets in a massive deal in free agency. I mean, this is a new era, obviously, for the Mets, but I don't see Max Fried coming here. But I've said since day one, I think the Mets are going to be very much in on Corbin Burnes. You had the Milwaukee and Stearns connection there. I think Stearns likes Corbin Burnes. So I could very much see that happening. Yeah, they need a lefty. They need a lefty in the bullpen. Maybe that means bringing back Brooks Raley. I think Raley was good and then got hurt. I think he was good for this team. Crochet will be pricey. Again, it's fun to think of what's coming next. And a lot of Yankee fans and people coping are putting out the Mets lineup and who hits behind Soto. Well, we don't know yet. We got a lot of off season still left, and you're going to see more moves in the coming days here at the winter meetings. So there's a lot still to address. But it's what a time to be alive. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life for me. Will it pay off? A World Series will tell. We got to see this team win now. Time for this team to win. I think Starling Marte probably becomes your DH now, or they trade him. Listen, if someone's willing to take Starling Marte and his $20 million remaining, I think the Mets will be all in trying to move him and then getting an upgrade. I'm just not sure if anyone's going to want to take that whole contract. It's only a year. He's still got something left in the tank. He could still steal bases. I don't think Marte's career is over. I'm curious if he becomes trade bait now. Question for you, Jake. How do you see what the Mets line will look like? It's hard to say what the lineup G-Money is going to look like because we need to see if Alonso's coming back, if they trade for Vladdy, if they get Bregman, what's next? I think they loved Lindor in the leadoff spot, and he really thrived there. I'm curious if they change that now with him and Soto. I kind of like Nimmo, Lindor, Soto a little bit better because, if you're facing a left-hand pitcher, you split it up with lefty, righty, lefty. So I kind of like that, but I think they do like Lindor in the leadoff spot. So, it could be Lindor, Soto, maybe Christian Walker, Nimmo, or Nimmo, Walker, or Alonso, Vientos. I don't know. I just don't love Pete Alonso hitting behind Juan Soto. I think the Mets are going to realize that too. I don't think he offers the best protection for Soto. Soto's going to get pitched a lot differently if he's got a boomer bust hitter right behind him. The Mets have to figure out how can we get a hitter behind Juan Soto that's not Aaron Judge, because no one's Aaron Judge, but that will get on base, that will hit homers, but also hit the ball the other way. Also drive a guy in from second or third base. Like, that's how the Mets got to think. And you got to use your brain here. A lot of Met fans are using their heart and emotion with Pete Alonso and bringing it back. Pete Alonso, let's be real, he's not the best protection for Juan. Everyone's like, he'll just hit a home run. Well, maybe he won't. Maybe he'll ground it to a double play or strike out. So having Pete Alonso protect Juan Soto is not as good and sexy as you think it sounds, because there are a lot of times you're going to want to pull your hair out. For me, I got nothing left to pull out of my head, where you're like, God damn it, Pete. You're going to be saying that a lot. You said that a lot last year in the worst season of his career. So I think you got to think logically here of, let's put the best bat possible behind him. Now, maybe Alonso moves down to the order. Soto's 2 and Viento's 3 and Alonso 4. But I still don't like him protecting Juan Soto in the lineup, because there's going to be a lot of double plays and strikeouts, and you're going to be pissed off. So you want a guy who gets on base more and hits for a better average, hitting behind your future Hall of Famer now, Juan Soto. Carlos Santana is somewhat intriguing, but he's 39 years old. So, that seems like a Mets move in the Wilpon era to sign Carlos Santana to play first. The issue is, after Walker and Pete, we're talking about Carlos Santana, Paul Goldschmidt, Josh Bell, Nolan Arenado. I don't love Arenado just because he's $21 million and he's coming off the worst year of his career. Now, if it's a Starling Marte for a Nolan Arenado trade, or Marte and McNeil, or Marte and a mid-level prospect, that's more intriguing to me. But I don't love Arenado playing first, coming off a really bad year. I don't know if that's the best move that you can make. Nolan Arenado also under contract for a few more years, so you're not going to be out of that contract, so you don't have a lot of wiggle room there. Nolan Arenado has 3 years left on his contract. Now, after 2021, after $21 million in 2025, he gets $16 million the year after and $16 million in 2027 before he becomes a free agent. And then there's some deferred money, a couple million deferred money, similar to Bobby Bonilla, $2 million, $3 million, $3 million, $3 million until 2041. So, see, a lot of deferred money on Nolan Arenado. I just don't think he is a player that's intriguing. Bellinger does intrigue me more because of his ability to play first some days and his ability to play center, and it's a one-year deal. You're not committed long-term. Bellinger you're going to have to trade for, so you got to match up money, or you got to give them prospects. So depending on what Bellinger costs, I do like Bellinger on the Mets. But again, Bellinger coming off injuries and a subpar year. Arenado, though, I think a couple of years ago, Arenado I would have loved. Now in 2025, I'm not in love with Nolan Arenado on the Mets. There's a lot of ways they could go. This is going to be a fun couple of weeks here. I'm very intrigued to see where they go. Bregman would be surprising. Burns would not. Bellinger would not be surprising. Vladdy, I think they're going to give a call to the Blue Jays, but I think they're going to want too much, and Stearns is going to say, no, we'll pay you next year. Here's the thing. If the Mets pay Juan Soto what they did, they can get anyone. Anyone is now at your disposal. This team for this offseason still has $90 to $100 million left to spend. They got a lot of money still to spend. But Juan Soto is a New York Met, 15,765. After year 5, it could go to $55 million a year. 26 years old. He just turned 26 October 25th. He's a World Series champion, a 5-time Silver Slugger, a 4-time All-Star, a 162-game average of 35 homers, 102 RBIs. He's coming off a 41-homer, 109 RBI year. He's got a career OBP of 421. The guy gets on base almost every other time. You got the Soto shuffle. He's got 201 homers in 7 seasons. That's, 5 full, 1 nearly full in a 60-game season. He's durable. He's played at least 150 games in all 5 of those full seasons when you don't count the rookie year or COVID year. This guy stays on the field. He'll play for you. He's not going to steal you a bunch of bases. The most bases he stole was 12 in 2023 and 2019. Maybe he gets you 15 with the new rules and, depending on who's hitting around him, but he's not going to steal you a bunch, but he's going to be an all-star. He's going to help the rest of the lineup. And I also think he can be a really good mentor for young players like Francisco Alvarez. Alvarez, who posted him on his IG story, make him a Met. He's a Met. It's going to be huge in terms of mentoring these young guys. Vientos. This is a big day in Mets history. So enjoy it today. Enjoy it. Now, tweets are out there of Yankees were in the lead for Soto all through the process through the weekend and late afternoon today. Steve Cohen came from the top rope very late and got it done. Well, we've said it over and over. He was going to outbid him. So Yankees could be in the lead all they want. In the end, Cohen was going to give him the most money possible. What a time. We'll see what happens next. Like I said, Burns, Manaea. I don't think Sasaki's going to happen. A Walker Buehler. Christian Walker first. Maybe Bellinger. Lots of moves still to be made. Try and trade Jeff McNeil. Play Luis Angel Acuna more. Maybe move Vientos over. Lots still to do, and we'll break down whatever comes next on the Mets Magic podcast. But celebrate today. Juan Soto is a New York Met for the next at least 5 years and maybe 15. Could be a Met for the rest of his life, and he could put that Mets hat on when he is inducted into Cooperstown one day. Enjoy it for now, but still lots more to get done for the Mets, and we'll be covering all season on the Mets Magic podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash that thumbs up below. Give us a comment how you feel about the Mets right now after signing Juan Soto. Follow me at Jake Brown Radio on all social media and subscribe to my YouTube at Jake Brown Radio. Thanks, everybody, for watching the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. When the Mets make their next move, we'll be back here in an emergency offseason episode to talk about it. Juan Soto is a New York Met. Have a great night, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Mets Magic on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.